He might not be from Krypton, but he's heads above the rest. His knowledge can't be questioned. You can put it to the test. So if you want to hear the truth and have nowhere else to go, I'll give you the solution. Just tune into his show and just kneel before Zod. Kneel before Zod. Kneel before Zod. Kneel before Zod.
So this is in fact my review on Justified. Welcome. Did I need 2 openings? No, probably not, but I did it anyways, and I don't care. Welcome everybody to my overall review, impressions, thoughts, comments, critiques, whatever, on the long-awaited, at least for me, I don't know how many people are actually doing a review on this show, but at least for me, the long-awaited return of a show I did not know I wanted to return. That is right. This is a breakdown of the series Justified City Primeval, starring Timothy Olyphant and Boyd Holbrook, as well as some other people I'll get into later. But those are really the 2 main stars you need to know about in this series that premiered. It is all available streaming live on Hulu, so you could go and check that out if you so choose, if you are so inclined, if you are so interested, or love the world of Justified, or just playing like cowboy hats like I do myself. So what is Justified about? Justified is the story, the long winding tale, the adventures of U.S. Marshal Raylan Givens. This series started in Kentucky, where he went from Miami to his hometown of Kentucky to kind of do penance for shooting somebody. And through the series, yes, I'm eating a pumpkin spice flapjack. It's okay. Just roll with it. So through the series, Raylan, through wacky shenanigans, has adventures in Kentucky, where he meets and squares off with Boyd Crowder, played by the wonderful Walton Goggins. Now, why am I bringing all this up? Because to watch this series and understand the hype for, in particular, the final episode, you kind of need to understand some of the characters from the original. Now, granted, this is its own story. It does stand on its own. There are still story threads that follow through from Justified. Maybe I'll do a series review on Justified, the original. But for right now, this is just on City Primeval. So, City Primeval is the story about U.S. Marshal Raylan Givens. And on his way to spend time with his daughter and get some much needed R&R, he winds up actually getting into a crazy I don't want to say altercation, but he winds up being dragged into a situation in the city of Detroit, and wacky shenanigans ensue as they do with Raylan Givens. So first off, I'm going to do this professionally because I like this show. So I am going to break this down in a very professional manner and then get to the nitty-gritty of it. So let's start off with the people who will be acting in this. Timothy Olyphant plays Raylan Givens. Anjun Ellis plays Caroline Weiler, who's a defense attorney. Uh, Von Dyke Curtis Hall, he is pretty well known. He was in Netflix Daredevil. He plays Sweetie, who's owns this bar and has some shady dealings. Aleda Clemens plays Sandy Stanton, who is the love interest of our villain. Speaking of our villain, Boyd Hallberg, who was in Sandman. He was in Narcos. He was also in Logan as the main villain. He again plays a villain named Clement Mansell, who is known as the Oklahoma Wildman. Victor James is in this show. Uh, and let me see who else here. I think I got the main cast. Oh, and Marion Ireland uh, is also in this as well. So there is also some special guest stars. Keith Davis has a very small role in like the first two episodes, and David Cross from Arrested Development. So there's a lot of big names in this. There's a couple of big cameos. There is also some old school characters who make a return to this series. But yeah, so that's our cast. And the 8 episodes I will break down individually to kind of give you my thoughts, my overall feelings on each of the episodes. So I'll kind of give a short synopsis, and then I will give you my thoughts and rating of the episode, and then I'm gonna give the rating and overall thoughts of each episode, then the series rating, and what I think of this show as a whole. So, to begin, there'll be spoilers because this is a series overview and I can't explain this without spoiling some of the show. I'll try to be as brief as possible, but definitely spoilers for the end of this show. So, let's jump into this. The first episode is City Primeval, and this it picks up with Raylan and his daughter Willa, played by Vivian Oliphant, which is Timothy Oliphant's daughter, as they are getting ready to go on a trip. They kind of get robbed during this, or these thugs attempt to ram Raylan off of the road in comical Raylan fashion. Of course, he gets the jump on them and decides to take them in. At this point in the show, he goes into Chicago, and as Raylan does, he pisses off the judge, and he gets stuck in Detroit. In Detroit, they are looking for a man named Clement Mansell, who steals a car from a gas station, and he effectively winds up. Well, the judge. Okay, so let me back up. The judge. Raylan pisses off the judge, played by Keith Davis, with his Raylan charm. He winds up being held in contempt of court. As a sort of punishment, he has to figure out who tried to blow up this judge's car in the beginning of the episode. Wacky shenanigans ensue, and the judge winds up dying, which in fact leaves Raylan stuck in Detroit until they figure out who murdered the judge. So the premise for this show and episode 1 is pretty good. Now, I do have some complaints about episode 1, and my main complaint is going to be Vivian Oliphant as Willa. Willa is a terrible character. Now, I'm not going to say this is necessarily the actress's fault. Timothy Oliphant is a very good actor. His daughter is just starting off. I don't know what other roles she has played in, so I can't say if this is like her first acting gig. I want to say this is her first acting gig, but it really shows. And out of the whole cast, she seems to be the most inexperienced, and this is going to bleed into the next episodes until they get rid of her character. Unfortunately, I did not like Willa. I thought it was a waste of time. The story goes nowhere. Honestly, I think the daughter figure would have been good played by somebody else. Her voice is extremely annoying, uh, and she doesn't. The biggest thing and my biggest issue with her character is she adds nothing to the story. She essentially disappears towards the later half of the season. I think people realized her character wasn't that great. I don't know, but she adds absolutely nothing to the show. I think if anything, she hinders it. Timothy Olyphant in this episode. So, what do I have to? My man in the cowboy hat, Raylan Givens, after damn near 10 years, has Timothy lost a step with this character? Hell no. From the first moment you see him on screen, you can tell he has not skipped a beat. Him getting older just seems to give a more distinguished look to the character. Um, he's still a crack shot, still a smartass. There's a lot of tongue-in-cheek things. I think my favorite line of episode 1 was when, if you guys don't know, this is in Detroit. The two thieves, Raylan does his Raylan thing, where he locks them up in his car. He threatens to lock a black man in his trunk. This attorney, who we'll talk about later, goes, "You threatened to lock a black man in the sun and heat." And Raylan looks at the judge, who is a black judge, by the way. And I want to say, I do like how they tackle the politics in the show. It was hilarious. It wasn't one sided. The argument does look bad when she lays out exactly what he did. And he's like, now hold on a second. He's like, I don't care if they were black. I'd do the same thing to a white dude if he had accosted me too. He goes, as a matter of fact, and then he looks around and just stops himself. And I think that's funny because there is in the season of Justified several times where Raylan has thrown multiple people into the trunk of his car. So I thought that was a great nod to the original series. There is an underlining police corruption, mayoral corruption, um, this kind of feeling of um, scandal. And I'm going to get into in my negatives why I think for why these don't work. And actually, it is not for the reasons people think. I thought this was going to get really heavily into race and things like that. I'm glad it wasn't, but at the same time, the writers seem to be writing the show so good. I kind of wish they would have gotten into more of what they were touching on, and we'll get into that as it goes because it raises questions, but at the end of the day, that plot really goes nowhere. It just feels like a thing they threw in just to move the characters along, but it doesn't define anybody's character. It doesn't really contribute to the overall narrative. So I think beyond making a political statement that shouldn't be in something, also a waste of time is when you have a good subject you bring up that fits the area you're in. You could talk about police corruption and shootings and things. Detroit fits this setting perfect. And I think that one of the biggest wasted opportunities, surprisingly, for the show is that they didn't explore the police corruption and the corruption in City Hall and stuff as well as they should have. And I understand it's probably for the sake of keeping things balanced and not getting backlash, but this is a weird case where I think these writers were actually smart enough to, instead of doing this subject lazy, to kind of tackle it and open up a conversation. Raylan has been in Miami, but he's very much a Southern cop. How does this factor in? How do the people feel about this white dude going through these neighborhoods and kind of like? I think it was the perfect show to tackle that, and they kind of just waste it. So that was one of the things that I thought was wasted in this episode. But episode 1, largely, uh, Clement doesn't really do anything until the end of the episode. And this is where I knew Boyd Holbrook would be a great sort of antagonist for Raylan. So at the end of episode 1, he the judge who we are following And this is another plot line that pissed me off in this show. Another thing that kind of upset me. They never tell you who actually tries to kill this judge. It's kind of just left in the air. But the opening of the show and the whole kickoff is this judge trying to be bombed and Raylan finding out who killed the judge. Now, one thing I did like is the villain, the antagonist set up for this season, um, and the amazing actor who plays him. They really set the stage. And they do something that normally wouldn't work unless you have an actor like Boyd Hallbrook. So at the end of episode 1, um, this judge is being hunted down by somebody. Somebody's trying to kill him. But in a weird twist of events, it kind of, I want to say coincidence, really. And and it's played in such a way where it's believable. In a weird act of coincidence, he gets out, and this judge flips off Boyd. Boyd follows him and winds up shooting him and his date dead. Um, and the thing is, he wasn't the one trying to kill the judge. It just so happens he's a psychopath, and we'll get into Boyd Hallberg's character later. Clement is a complete psychopath. Will kill anybody with no remorse, um, no conscience, no regret. He's just a killer. It's basically what he is. They do give him a few layers, but um, he proves you don't need a complex villain if the actor is good. And Boyd Hallberg really knocks it out of the park. Um, on paper, Clement is just a kind of um, one-dimensional villain, I think would be the best way to put it. He doesn't have a lot of depth. And you guys know here on the channel I call myself General Zod. When you think about General Zod in the mythos of Superman, he too is one-dimensional. It's the person who plays them and with these villains that gives him depth. And the great thing about his performance, especially in this episode and setting up what kind of threat he'll be through the season, is it always feels like he's got more underneath the surface. The issue is that he just, I don't know. I think that they should have had a little bit more depth, because we don't get much about his character. A credit to the actor, he does such a great job that you do want to know more about the character, but unfortunately his character is just not explored in this show whatsoever. So other than that, Clement winds up killing the judge, and the judge has this book on him, on his persons, and he winds up taking the book. And later on, I will explain what this book is, but this book will become the motivating drive pretty much for the rest of the show. So, moving right along to episode 2, The Oklahoma Wildman. Episode 2 is pretty much about some backstory into Boyd and the other supporting character, Sweetie, who will play a pretty vital role. And the actor Von Dyke Curtis Hall, who plays Sweetie, does an excellent job. Sweetie is probably one of the most fleshed out characters here in this episode. He's kind of a hustler, a bit of a go-between for criminals, so to speak. And Sweetie is introduced, and pretty much in a good majority of these episodes, up to a certain episode, and we'll get there when we get there. But I gotta say, Sweetie and Von Dyke, who plays him, does an excellent job, because he has a short amount of time for you to care about this person, given to something that happens that really impacts the rest of the story. But Sweetie is a great character. He plays him really well. We get a little bit more about backstory on Mansell and what his modus operandum is, how he became known as the Oklahoma Wildman. Basically, there's a drug deal. Mansell comes in, and it turns out Sweetie sold out the drug dealers so that they can rob them. Although I don't think the part of the deal was that he fucking brutally murders everyone. Mansell in a very brutal fashion. And I like to highlight this too. Justified being on Hulu, it's kind of rated R now instead of them hard cutting away from some stuff or things being cut from the show because of being on FX. Even though FX pushed the boundaries, they use the F word quite a bit in this show. There is some sex scenes, and there is brutal violence. So this scene in particular, and it's probably one of my favorite scenes. I'll get to the next one when we get towards the end of the series, but the second episode starts with them doing this deal, and Sweetie pretty much portrays these guys. Boyd has this thing. Boyhood Hallberg, Clement, I'll just call him by his character name, Clement Mansell, has this thing where he plays a tape. And if you hear this tape, he is going to fucking kill you. And it's him singing Seven Nation Army as a cover. I don't know why. There was something badass about this to me. I fucking loved whenever he puts in this tape, either he's going to fuck somebody up or he's going to kill them. 9 out of 10 times, he's probably going to kill them. But it's him singing a cover to Seven Nation, and he puts the tape in, and everybody's sitting there, and it's all these black dudes, and they're big dudes, and he just fucking takes a gun out and in very violent fashion fucking blows everybody in this den away. Like, he kills like 4 people. Okay, so Clement in this show kills like, I don't know, probably like 7 or 8 people. Hey, what's up, Aaron? Good to see you. Don't worry, I'm just getting started. I am going over Justified, my thoughts. Episode 1, I liked, except for uh, Timothy Olyphant's daughter, who is in this. She plays his daughter in the show. I thought she was terrible, but the rest of the episode was good. So I'm moving on, kind of recapping the episodes and telling you my thoughts of each individual episode. I'll give you the good and the bad of the whole series, and then I'll tell you if it's worth watching. Spoilers, it's worth watching. So anyways, episode 2 is called The Oklahoma Wildman. We pick up. Basically, Timothy is forced to stay and figure out who killed this judge after he pissed off the judge. And so he's working with the Detroit police office to try to catch Clementine. And this is the episode where I realized that these two were the perfect foil for each other. In Justified, if you guys watched the original run, Walton Goggin played Boyd Crowder. And Boyd and Raylan's saga, their duel, was the highlight of that show. Walton Goggins versus Timothy Olyphant was like the greatest battle between 2 people ever. And the differences, how smart they were, and just the shit that went through, it was the most climatic. I will be talking about all of Justified, but needless to say, there are some actors that make the showdowns intense. And Boyd Holbrook as Clement and Timothy Olyphant have this chemistry from the moment this episode when the villain meets the protagonist. It is one of the most intense scenes I have seen in a show in quite some time. So, throughout this episode, Raylan is chasing Mansell. They introduce a new character called Sandy. She is the attorney of Sweetie, who Raylan is tracking Sweetie to get to Mansell. Raylan is, of course, summoned into Caroline's office, where he's introduced to Mansell. Now, he finally catches up with Mansell, does his Raylan thing, his badass, I'm gonna get you, southern kind of tone thing. I can't do the voice. You guys all know, if you've seen Justified, what he sounds like. Anyways, so they meet in this office, and they kind of have a standoff within itself. And then in one of the ballsiest moves I think done by anybody in the history of this Justified series. Mansell and Raylan have a little bit of back and forth in the lawyer's office. And then, with the biggest set of balls I've ever seen an antagonist do, and probably one of the best scenes, Raylan is shocked when Mansell tracks down Raylan's hotel and talks to his daughter. It is one of the most intense scenes I think I've seen. Once again, Timothy Olyphant's daughter is not a very good actress. She almost brings the scene down. But all in all, the scene is very good. And at the end of the scene, Mansell is basically goading Raylan into shooting him or having a shootout with him. And Raylan at this time is trying to change his life. He's trying to be better for his daughter, that kind of a deal. And so he decides he's not going to engage, but he does beat the shit out of him outside of this hotel. And he says to him, "You come near my daughter again, I'll fucking kill you." And it was like, hold on, I'm gonna see. Hold on, I want to see if I could pull up a clip because just this scene alone, I really want to show everybody just how great these two bounce off of each other. So hold on a second. I think I will play this scene for everyone. So here's a clip of these two when they first meet, just so you get an idea of how great this one scene is.
Hey, there he is. Like Seiko. You know,
So the balls, this man sits next to his daughter.
Chicken fingers. Never understood why they call them fingers. Fries, milkshake, extra thick. I told Will that everything could be our little secret, and I told her mom because you know our mom. Yeah. I can't believe it. You didn't tell her about your good old friend Clement after all the time we spent together at Glencoe.
They used to call you chicken fat.
Sweetheart, why don't you head upstairs?
It's early.
Will.
30 minutes.
Now.
What if I have dessert and you guys order something to eat? Because I would love to hear more stuff.
She's a hell of a negotiator, even better than her old man. It was the first time in your life. Just say, yes, Dad. You know, he did a great job.
Like I
She's
said,
very
this speaks to Willa's acting.
You are a tough man to track down.
Sorry,
man.
she's not very good.
Give me 3 whole tries.
But the rest of the scene is okay.
Stand up. Well, you want to shoot an unarmed man? Did some digging about you, Raylan. Interesting story about you and a man on a rooftop in Miami. Well, go to the room. I was just doing you a favor, trying to take care of your little one. Sorry about that. No, she is a little young for my taste, but if this were Kentucky, I'd be tapping that ass. Whew. Chicken fat. See you near my daughter. I'll fucking kill you.
Like, oh my god, this is the end of the episode for episode 2. And what a stinger, what a way to end it. I did not like the format of going week by week. But yeah, that is a great way for me, in my mind, to set up your antagonist and protagonist. I do like the fact that this was on the streaming service, because things like that, they can't say fucking on FX. There was a lot of times where it was blurted or whatever else. So I appreciated that little conflict. I think that set the stage for how ballsy this new antagonist is versus how much anger and crazy Raylan is. So what's up? I'm going through the full season breakdown of Justified and my thoughts on the end of the new Justified City Primeval. All 8 episodes are officially on Hulu. Go check it out. So, I think that, yeah, he was lucky he got off easy. I I like how you see. For me, the character that really grows the most is Raylan himself. I like the arc that Raylan goes on in this. I'll get to what happens near the end of it, but for right now, we'll just say Raylan really grows more than any other season of Justified. I know it's a bold claim, but I am confident in saying more than any season of Justified I've seen, I think this show really has the most complete arc for Raylan, because at the end of Justified, it wrapped up Boyd, and I felt a lot of the show revolved around what happened between Raylan and Boyd and how that was going to end. But this really feels like a good cap off for Raylan and being a Marshal. But don't worry, we'll get there. So episode 2 was pretty good. I liked it. I like Raylan attacking him. I thought that that was great how they do show Raylan trying to evolve and change. He does try to give him a warning. We will get back to that later. And I think it sets you up for uh, a great showdown between these two. And we'll get to the final showdown. I have mixed feelings, but we'll get there. But so far, the setup is good. Now, once again, the daughter of Raylan is fucking annoying. If you guys heard her voice in the background, I do not like her acting. I think she slows it down. Luckily, we get rid of her, and the rest of the show focuses on. And I know that's terrible to say. I really wish I didn't have that, but unfortunately, I just don't think. And overall, in the story, she does not add anything. If they took her out and didn't put her storyline in this, it would not be different, except for the very end and his reason for doing something he does. We'll get there. But my overall thoughts of just the daughter character in general, to me, and wasting so much time on her character when you only have 8 episodes for a show, I thought it was a little bit um, of a just kind of putting somebody in there just for the sake of throwing them in there. It didn't feel like the character really added anything, to be quite honest with you. I thought that maybe if she had more time to sort of develop as a character, but they really put her into like these first 2 episodes, and then you don't see her for the rest of the show. So I mean, well, no, I think she's in this 3rd episode too, but pretty much by the 5th episode she's gone, or the end of this episode she winds up leaving because of things that happen with Mansell. But episode number 3, Backstabbers, is really good, and it focuses on Mansell now taking advantage of the fact that Raylan assaulted him outside of the hotel. So he's not a stupid villain, of course. All the great villains aren't. Like I said, he is a very one-dimensional villain, but there are points where they show he's kind of not one-dimensional, and he does plan these things out. There's other points where it seems like he himself suffers, like Raylan does, from just this anger where they'll just lash out and do shit without thinking about it. Like I said, I'll get to my overall thoughts of his character after I'm done summarizing all of the episodes. But needless to say, this is where you get to see the smarts of Clement and his plan starting to form. So he makes short work of Raylan by using his lawyer to get a restraining order on him. And This was hilarious. I thought, and Boyd Holbrook really gets to show his acting chops off here. He goes into the lawyer's office, and he puts on this big charade, and he's like, I was just saying hi to a friend and he assaulted me, and my feelings are just really hurt because I thought we were going to be good friends. I was laughing my ass off. Boyd Holbrook puts a lot into this character. I feel like the character was wrote to be very one-dimensional, and this man puts a lot of acting into. He does the work into making this character a suitable foil for Raylan. Just his sarcasm and shit, and the way he like pokes the bear, so to speak. He very much, he very much nails that whole thing that great antagonists in Justified have, where they piss off Raylan to a point of him wanting to murder them. But it's kind of different because this antagonist kind of has the same makings that Raylan does, and it almost feels like the writers are kind of writing it of what if Raylan was actually the bad guy? What would that look like? And I always thought that Boyd was that, but I realized, and like I said, I'm gonna do a review on Justify the series. Justify is the first series, but I always thought him and Boyd were kind of like it was the brother he never had, and that's why he never pulled the trigger on killing him. This one felt like, what if Raylan was a villain? What would that look like? And this guy plays it well. He's got the same kind of snarky attitude, doesn't give a shit about the law. He really is like, if you looked at a mirror of this character, what would the evil version of that be? That's what the vibes that I got when watching his performance. And it made very interesting because uh, in some ways, it's also why I feel like he just wants to kill him at a certain point, and we'll get there. But it's at like he realizes this guy is a pure force of nature. And in the show Justified, Boyd made a comment to Raylan about how he was a force of nature and Boyd was an immovable object. But this, it's like two forces of nature in one city, just fucking tearing through everything. So, Backstabbers is really good. Um, except for my one issue, which we'll get into more. But this show takes a really long time, and it's slow. Now, I don't have a problem with slow series, but my issue is with some of these plots that they put into it. It A, does not go anywhere, and B, it it feels like it makes the show slower than it actually should be. Hey, Sean B, what's up? I'm talking about Justified. How are you? I am on episode 3, Backstabbers. I'm just giving a brief overview of each episode, my thoughts, and then I'll give the full series, uh, my full series rating and overall thoughts, and what I thought about the revival of Justified, one of my favorite shows on television. So, anyways, Um, so this episode is a lot about Sweetie. It's about Sandy, and Sandy and Raylan start to develop a kind of relationship. Yes, this is Raylan is with a sister in this one, and I do mean in the biblical sense. We'll get there. A little bit of a switch up there. Um, I don't know if I like their relationship, to be honest with you, because does not feel it doesn't feel it feels like it's set up for the show. I don't know if that makes sense. It doesn't feel organic to where it really builds into something. Like, they try, but with 8 episodes, I don't think you can have a relationship like you do with Winona, or with what the hell was her name for the other chick there, that Boyd winds up getting with. But you guys get what I mean. Like, it doesn't feel organic the way these two seem to meet up. And by the way, I'm doing good, thank you. So Sweetie is close with the lawyer, and Sweetie has a visit from Caroline. Now, Caroline is, I guess, the side piece for Clement, our main bad guy, or Mansell. I'm just gonna call him Mansell. Anyways, so Mansell has this pistol that he uses, a very distinct Luger, old school pistol, and he charges his girl, who's, I'm not gonna lie, a fucking idiot, to get rid of this weapon. And she takes it to the bar of his good friend Sweetie, who he has these dealings with. Now, Mansell specifically said to throw the gun over the bridge, but this dumb bitch does not do that. She hides the gun in his friend's bar, which his friend finds. So this is like something they set up, and I do want to say some of the things they set up in this show I feel are kind of just set up to move the plot. Hello, uh, Oiler Greg. Good to see you. I am talking about one of my favorite shows, Justified, and my thoughts. I'm just breaking down every episode, and then I'm going to go over my series critique, and then give my final verdict. So enjoy. This is going to be a bit of a long one. I'm in episode 3, and I'm just giving my thoughts of each episode and where I think the flaws are, and also the positives. So once again, a big problem with this show that I started catching about here in episode 3 was there was a lot of convenience. There's a lot of things I saw them set up where the writing just wasn't as strong as the original series. There's a lot of like coincidences that have to happen for shit to like go a certain way. And I understand it's like 8 episodes, but I feel like the writing could have been a little bit tweaked, especially with this part. This woman is like the hub of fucking stupidness. Yes. If you are a fan of the original Justified, I do recommend this. It's only 8 episodes, as opposed to the 13 to 16 episodes of the OG series. I would, however, recommend you rewatch at least the last season of Justified to understand this one. There are a few callbacks to the original series. You don't have to watch it, though. This is a self-sustained story, but I think it just add to the ending of the show, and I'll get to that when I get there. But yeah, I would highly recommend it. It was very good. I did not enjoy my time watching it. I'm just critiquing this from a critical standpoint, but if you ask me as a fan of Justified, do I think this is a good show worth watching? Hell yes. I have the hat. Okay? Hell yeah. This is 100% worth your time. It's very smartly written. Timothy Olyphant is fucking phenomenal. Hasn't lost a beat. Yeah, I do recommend this show. But I'm just giving you my honest critique because, like I said, I review things objectively. Just because I like something, I don't want to say it's the greatest thing. This show does have some huge issues. So, take that as you will. So, anyways, so episode 3, this plot line is gonna be important with this gun. So this fucking idiot, she doesn't get rid of this gun, and he throws it in the ocean. So, meanwhile, there is another side deal going on with with her and this Armenian. This is going to come in later. They're going to rob this Armenian guy. Shit goes sideways. Or I think this episode was the setup. But, we'll get back to the Armenians. There's a lot of moving parts in this show for 8 episodes. So, episode 4 is entitled Kokomo. So, I believe it's, yeah, Kokomo. It's supposed to be like a playoff of the Beach Boys. So in this episode, there is a secret room that of this guy that they are going to hustle Mansell and his girl Sandy, and so they get him in this secret room thinking he has a lot of money, and he does not. But this guy who she's dating happens to be the son of a really powerful Ukrainian mobster. So Mansell takes the dude, beats him, puts his fucking leg in a door, and thank God, as violent as this show is, they do not show everything, but it's like one of those steel panic room doors. Fucking crushes his leg. Now, this is what I want to say about good sound design and why this episode in particular gets high marks. I like when a show does violent scenes without feeling the need to show you all of the violence. Now, keep in mind, this is on Hulu. This is rated R. But I do respect them kind of cutting away to some of the more violent scenes to let your imagination do the work, because then the sound design really takes over for this episode and you see this giant fucking door come down, right? Because he crushes dude with his own panic door. He sticks his leg underneath and then they cut away, but you hear the thing go down and you hear the scream and then you hear his bones crunching underneath this fucking panic door and they don't show nothing. And to me, I think it's a really good writing team when they can instill such a sense of dread and you just feeling on edge without showing anything at all. So right off the bat, this episode gets some pretty high marks for me. Yes, Aaron, yes, ouch. I think the scene is most effective too, because like I said, you don't, even though the show is rated R, they don't show the door crushing his leg as a gory detail. They don't have to. They just show his leg underneath it. You hear him scream in the background. You hear the thing, and it's so okay. So this scene, and this is one thing I give Justified City Primeval credit for. There's a lot of tension in this show. The way the writers build the tension in this show with the lighting and the atmosphere is first top tier, but secondly, in this scene proves like just hearing a and then it's going down slowly, and the camera lingers on this cutaway just to the metal door moving down, and right when it gets to where it's going to crush his leg, it cuts away and it shows behind the door and you hear and I have a good TV with good sound. Holy shit, man. I was like, ugh. And I watched it, and I'm like, wait, why am I looking away? They're not showing anything. They literally do not show any of the scene. But it's the anticipation. And I think that's something this show builds very well. With Raylan and Mansell and building up their rival, the show takes its time to build the atmosphere and the tension very well until you get to a scene, and then they could do a cutaway, and your mind is doing all of the work. So, high points for that. Very good. Now Mansell doesn't kill this guy. He just beats the shit out of him and lets him go. We then meet the mob boss in this episode, who will come in later. And the mob boss is the father of this guy, and it's implied this kid's kind of an idiot. Terry Kenny plays the mob boss. He played Tim Manus in Oz, if you guys have ever watched that show. He plays Tomaya Kostovitz. I don't know. I'm sorry. It's a Romanian name, so I'm sorry. My Romanian is not that good. They're a mob organization, but he plays the father of the dude whose leg got crushed. He's super pissed. He wants Mansell. He wants him dead. Keep that in the back of your mind. That comes back later. So, anyways, you see in this episode where they're placing the chess pieces. Now, once again, my problem with this show is not how they set up the chess, or not how the pieces are arranged on the board, but rather how they set up the pieces. I don't think the setup for a lot of these things were good, but the execution and the payoff is great, and we'll get there when I get there. But like I said, it's very clunky in the beginning. But there is scenes like that that as an audience member keeps you invested in wanting to see, okay, what's going to happen? Like, what are the repercussions? And granted, a lot of this shit doesn't get paid off till, I want to say, episode 6, 7, around there. That's when, I'd say from episode 6 until the end, it's nonstop, crazy shit is happening. But episodes 1 through 5, they have a weird pace, very slow, and they only give you little actions almost to keep you invested. But nothing really goes down until you kind of have all this stuff set up. So, long story short, this Albanian crime lord, he's super pissed. Meanwhile, Mansell, who's got the judge's notebook, they find out it's a bunch of names. The judge was blackmailing these people in power. Mansell goes to one of the people in the book to find out if the book is legit. That's where we get the dude from Arrested Development, who is funny as shit in this show. He plays this guy whose name is in the book, and he is an art collector or something of some kind. But anyways, they go and they test out the book, and it turns out that the book is true. Um, eh, and then the let me see, I'm trying to go down. The enforcers are trying to find out where Mansell is, so they're searching for him. Sandy, in the meanwhile, which is Mansell's girlfriend, is a fucking idiot. So she's doing stupid shit. I don't really want to get into her character. It's not important. If you notice, I haven't mentioned much of her. She's not super important. However, these two Albanian mob people go to Sandy's friend's apartment. Now, this was hilarious. Hera, who is Sandy's friend, and once again, another brutally violent scene. This one they actually do show. So, Sandy has a friend she obviously doesn't give a shit about because she's with a crazy murderer. And they call her at this diner. Her friend calls her and says she has to come over. She forgot something. And Boyd's like, fuck that bitch, I want to eat this steak. And so Clement Mansell, I'm just going to call him Mansell. Mansell has a whole monologue about how to cook a proper steak. It's fucking hilarious. Once again, Boyd Holbrook, just great acting. And very intimidating. He basically threatens to shoot the chef if he doesn't make his steak right. Little funny sidebar. So, the Albanian mobsters find Sandy's best friend. They tie her to a chair and they pull out her teeth. Now, once again, I want to stress how little goes a long way. Because they show you them pulling one tooth out. They cut the scene. They come back, and she's missing like 5. And there's blood coming down her mouth, and stuff like that. So you get the gist. And I'd like to say, once again, you don't have to go crazy with violence and blood and guts. I think what this show does great, once again, is the implication of the violence is, to me, what probably made a lot of these scenes stand out more than the original Justified. Because the original Justified was very straightforward. Someone drew their gun on Raylan fucking shot him. Like, there was really no nuance in the violence. Like, you went into that show expecting him at least once a week to pull his gun, shoot some bad guys. It was all good fun. And I do respect the writers, once again, for giving a little bit of nuance, a little bit more creativity in this series. So, we've seen Raylan be tortured before. There was a scene, I believe, in season 2. They, tie him up on a tree and they beat his ass with a bat. Dickie and them. Once again, I'm going to do a series breakdown of Justified. But we've seen torture scenes. This was so different to me because the sound. You hear the ripping of her friend's tooth. But instead of them showing you this dude pulling out all her teeth, which they could, It's on Hulu. It's uncensored. They chose to show one tooth being pulled out by its root and then cut the camera and cut back to when they get there and her, like, she has pretty much all the bottom teeth missing in this bowl with her teeth and like blood coming out of her mouth and shit. And I was like, oh god damn, that is, oh my god, man. Like, it was like, and I want to hint, when you really look at this, it's not the most violent thing on television. I wouldn't even say this was the second most violent thing I've watched this year, but it's the implication of the violence in this show that is fucking intense. Yeah, that's how I felt. I was like, I think it's when you sit back and you watch a show, and like I said, a good show can imply its violence without having to go all the way. Perfect example, Dexter, right? When they do the cutaways and you see he's chopped someone up, you see the initial cut, and then they cut the camera and you see he's dismembered somebody, right? I think that works better because you got that initial image and then you see the aftermath. And I think, to me, that lets people draw their own conclusions to the end of that scene. And just them cutting and then showing one tooth being pulled and then the rest of her teeth are in this fucking bowl. It's just like, oh god damn, man, these Albanian guys. And remember, the Albanians are a side story. So once again, they're doing a good job setting up all of these factions that are going to collide by the end of the show. But I think that was a really good way to show how serious these people are. Yeah, using the imagination to fill in is cheaper and more effective. Exactly. I think they did save a lot of money and time, honestly, because you got to take time to do the shot and stuff like that. I'm sure there's shots with them pulling this girl's teeth one by one, and they were like, "Nah, let's just pull one tooth." And then cut back and show the rest of her teeth in this bowl. And kudos to the team, very effective. So I gotta say, Kokomo once again picking up my faith in this, in the story. I see it getting better. We're on episode 4, but like I said, this show does have pacing issues. Um, but we're getting to where the show now is going to take a huge left turn into Holy Shit City. So episode 5 is called You Good, and episode 5, so Caroline, the district attorney who represents Raylan's arch nemesis, Raylan, as he does in very irresponsible fashion, if you've ever watched Justified, sleeps with the attorney. This is very in character for Raylan. If you followed the show as long as I do, Raylan makes terrible choices with women. I think there's a line where he says, either a bullet or a woman's gonna kill me. It's very iconic, but yeah. So Raylan is sleeping with the defense attorney of his mortal enemy, and yeah, which opens up new questions of her being able to represent her client. So, of course, this has got to be on the hush hush. We find a little bit more out about this attorney. Now, I'm going to say the actress is very good. She is very, very good. Her name is Anjun L. Ellis. She's been in the movie Ray, Freedom Land, um, The Taking of Pelham 123. I mean, Birth of the Nation. She's a very good actress. Um, Once again, a lot of the characters get very vague characterization as opposed to Raylan um, and Mansell. And I think it's a shame because, as I said before, they don't really explore the ethnicity and diversities of the characters. Sorry about that, folks. I got so passionate, I didn't realize my mic was muted. So, yeah, I wanted to say that um, the diversity of the characters. Oh yeah, sorry about that. So, as I was saying, um, I felt as if that the whole diversity thing could have been explored in an interesting way, and I appreciate this show staying down the center, but at the same time, it's Detroit. This would have been a perfect opportunity to kind of give these characters more layers by adding that element of where they live and everything that goes on in Detroit. We all know it's corrupt as fuck. This would have been the perfect time, I think, to explore that. I think they miss an opportunity in fleshing out this character's struggle as a district attorney with her ex and things like that. And I think that this is a rare case where the politics would have actually been interesting to explore with this character. Um, I'm glad that they kept the focus on the main story, but I felt like it kind of puts the side characters in the background where you have this playground to kind of really explore these racial tensions and things like that. This was a show where you could do that and it would make complete sense. But of course, with all the idiots who spout about, like, on both sides, a show's too diverse, it's not diverse enough. I think it ruins a show like this with good writers who have talent that kind of don't want to even try to ride that line. And it's a shame because I think it would have gave a lot of depth to a few more of these characters. So that's just my little off-topic rant. So, anyways, we find out Carolyn is sleeping with Raylan. This will come back later. Mansell and Sweetie get together. Keep in mind they have this book. This is where they extort one of my favorite actors, David Cross. If you have not seen him in the sitcom Arrested Development, he is fucking hilarious. But he plays a scumbag real estate agent who is in this book. They blackmail him, but Mansell gets pissed off as he does. And like I said, Mansell is the evil version of Raylan, so to speak. So Mansell uh, not only extorts this man for $30,000, but he also steals a painting that's worth like 10,000 on top of that. And so this will come back later. Raylan and Carolyn they go on a date at this restaurant. Um, this was a great scene where, like I said, the side characters do not get enough chances to really shine, and especially when you have a strong actress, as you do, playing this district attorney, uh, and June Ellis, who's really good. This scene really allows her to kind of flex, and that's when I realized the opportunity they missed by kind of minimizing the background characters, because in this scene it is fucking hilarious because her scumbag ex-boyfriend comes and him and Raylan essentially get into a pissing contest, and he goes about how she owes him this and owes him that and stuff like that, and he's been kind of harassing her throughout most of this episode. And then Raylan gets up and he's basically, he's Raylan, like, if you don't sit down, I'll put you down, kind of thing. And she looks and she's like, you know what? Fuck you. I'm not giving you any more money. She goes, you're lucky I don't burn your fucking house down. And she's like, fuck you. I don't need somebody, addressing my problems, and leaves. And so Raylan and this guy are looking at each other, and the black dude looks at him and he takes his seat and he's like, man, that bitch has always been like that. And then he just looks at him and they sit down and eat the rest of the food. And it was little things like this that I, wish they kind of had more episodes because I thought like these little moments for me, I thought really did thing. You know, it kind of added this like drama that like the first Justified had too much of it, but this show doesn't have enough to where you kind of start to more root for these side characters. Every side character in the original Justified, you knew everything about. If something happened to them, you felt it because we connected with them. And here I see like moments where these characters could really like chew up the scene, but they're just not given enough to do. And I get it. You only got 8 episodes, but I felt like they slowed down the show for a lot of other shit, especially if you cut Raylan's daughter out of the whole thing. I think you can add more of these other people because they were just far more interesting. So you had that. I had to point that out. For me, that was a highlight of the episode. Um, there is a special guest and a nod to the. If you guys don't know, this is based on a book series by Elmer Leonard. Can't speak. So Leonard Elmore. There we go. Goddamn. Anyways, so there is a nod to a character who's actually, this isn't Raylan's story. If you guys don't know, this is actually the story of another character from the Justified universe, and they actually make a nod to the book with the character named Cruz, who is actually, this story is supposed to be Cruz's story, but they gave it to Raylan because everybody likes Timothy Olyphant. But Paul Calder plays Cruz in this scene. And it's a kind of little nod to the book. It's a little cool interaction. And Cruz hunts Mansell in the book, and he kills him and quits the U.S. Marshal. And it's supposed to be a parallel between Raylan and Cruz and what could happen to him. They do meet in the book, but it's much later on. And it's kind of like Cruz is what Raylan could become if he keeps on being a marshal. So they play that scene in the show, but they reversed the roles, and I thought it worked. It worked really well. It was a cool parallel, given all of the backstory they built with Raylan, to see someone exactly like him, but Cruz is the guy who took it over the line, where Raylan always stepped himself back. Raylan may have killed people, but he always has this loose kind of moral code that pulls him from the edge of being just full on kind of corrupt. I'll explain in Justified, but Raylan always has this thing that kind of pulls him back to where he'll walk that morally gray line, but he won't ever cross it. And Cruz is the guy who crossed it, and it kind of is a parallel, and it kind of foreshadows where this is going later. And I found that out by rewatching these episodes. There's this conversation above all. Until you watch all of the show, you don't realize how important the conversation is. So brilliant. I loved it. Off that alone, I think this is a really good episode because the whole dynamic, and then when I see where it goes, and then you get the context of what they're talking about and what it means at the end of the whole entire series, or this is a limited series. We'll say the end of this series. It really brings this whole conversation into context and why this special guest appearance was so important, because everything that's said is strongly hinted at episode 8, and we'll get there. But yeah, it was really good. I liked it. I thought it was a great conversation. I wonder if the daughter is going to have a bigger part in the next season. I hope not. I'm gonna be honest, I thought her character was horrible. I'm sorry, she is not a good actress. I don't know if it's how they had her act. She wasn't good. I think if they changed her pitch and tone, and she didn't sound like such a little whiny bitch, she'd be better. And I'm just being honest. Don't hate me. That she was very whiny, very annoying. You'll see when you watch the show. You'll be glad when she disappears. But anyways, no, I'm sorry. She was terrible. Terrible. And I went in this wanting to give her a chance. But anyways, this conversation really highlights what's going to happen in this show. But he tells this story about how he chased this criminal, and at the end of it, Cruz killed the criminal. And the criminal was like kind of like who Raylan is facing now. But this guy, when he pulled for something, he pulled for a letter opener instead of a gun. Cruz shot him. He retired after that. Now, this is super important. We'll get to episode 8. But I didn't realize how important this episode was until I got there. So, like I said, the writing did not change. These writers are very good. They got these little things that come back when you on rewatch, like when you watch the full show. And I think had this not come out weekly and I could watch it like back to back, it would have made more sense where they were going. So I don't like the weekly format. I think they should have did what the Bear did and just release them all. But that's personal preference, whatever. So yeah. So we get to that story, and that is how episode 5 ends. And here is where I'm gonna say I was starting to fall off. I had a few complaints, and this is before I talk about the series in whole. But one key issue I have here, one main gripe that you guys should know about before I go into any of the other types of disapprovals or disappointments in this show, and one thing that lowers it was this feeling here. This episode in particular. That conversation was good. As I said, it was very needed. My issue is, this is an 8-episode show. You are on episode 5. Why do you end what some would consider a very important episode with a conversation? Nothing happens. There's no big scene to hook me into next week. And this is my one issue with this show, was that I felt the pacing was just god awful. And all the episodes weren't out. Can you imagine waiting a whole week off of a cliffhanger that's a conversation? And like I said, it's a small complaint. It doesn't ruin the rest of the show. I'm just being honest as I'm reviewing, because I don't want to be one of those reviewers who come on and go, this fucking show was epic. I loved it throughout the whole thing. This motherfucker is a masterpiece. This if you don't watch this show, you suck. This is the best show ever created. You hate good television. No. The show does have issues. And one of the main issues, and something I never ever in my life ran into, and you can leave comments and let me know, I've never in my whole entire life had an episode end in a conversation. Now, like I said, when you get to episode 8 and you find out why the conversation is a cliffhanger and important, it all makes sense. But they release this weekly. Ending your show on a fucking talk at the bar is fucking boring. And it does make this feel like it's not exactly Justified, because I went through and watched every season of Justified to get prepared for this, and never did they end it in a fucking conversation. There's always a stinger. And I don't know if it's just me and I'm weird that this bothers me so much, but imagine waiting a fucking full week on a conversation. It's weird. I don't understand it. I don't understand whose creative choice it was to cut the fucking episode off on a conversation in a bar. It's just fucking weird. I mean, it's just weird. Yeah, cuts mid-conversation and it makes it harder to follow. Yeah, and there is a previously on, right? But this is my issue that the original Justified never had, is that you can't end your show on a cliffhanger that kind of cuts in after a conversation with nothing that it doesn't incentivize the audience to come back. And the other cliffhanger they implied, we'll get to the last episode, I really want another fucking season. But God, it took a lot to get to that point. So now, thankfully, we're getting into the final episodes that this is where the show really comes into its own. And this is where shit goes down, as they say. So, Adios is episode number 6. First off, love the title. Great title, especially when you figure out what the ending is about. Warning, slight spoilers here for some key plot points, but Caroline and Raylan are banging. I'm just gonna keep it simple. And so she comes to Raylan and tells him about this book that the judge has, and that this book is important because it has the names of city officials, district attorneys, corrupt cops, that the judge used this book as a ledger to blackmail. So Keith Davis's judge, now you see his importance. And the bomb in the beginning of the show that kicks everything off was by this dude who was the art collector trying to kill him. Mansell had nothing to fucking do with it, and that's what I found hilarious too. Mansell kills, so it's revealed Mansell killed the judge just because he cut him off in traffic. That's how crazy this new villain is, which I thought was even more fucking hilarious. So I was like, good for you, show. Sometimes the main villain doesn't have to be the bad guy, right? Mansell is not actually the dude trying to kill the judge. He killed him, but it was because the judge pissed him off. He happened to just stumble in this, just like Raylan. This guy pissed him off, he got mad, cut him off, shot him and his wife. There was nothing beyond that. And to me, this is where I really did like this season a lot, because it's not always that there's a grand scheme. And I think that was another theme in this season. There's not always a grand plan, right? There's not always like a big villain twirling his mustache and you're going to find out who wanted this judge dead. That isn't the point. The point is Mansell stole this fucking book that wasn't his. He had nothing to do with the judge, and the people who wanted him killed, by a series of fucking coincidences, he meets the guy who actually planted the bomb, which was the art guy. And I don't know, I thought this to me also piqued my interest because, and it's not coincidences as in shitty writing, it's coincidences as in shit that could happen in life. Like, this dude just happened to be here at this time. This just happened to piss him off. He just happened to get this book, and that leads these chains of events. Now, Raylan happens to be in this town and dealing with the judge who pissed him off. The judge found out about who he was, given his colorful history, and kept him here. It was like they were fated to meet each other. Not really happened as much as like luck, but just like an outside force almost. And this is where the writing is good, because you don't feel like this is contrived bullshit pulled out of someone's ass. This feels like just life, man. Like you meet someone gets shot and stuff happens. Like, that's what it felt like to me. It felt like, holy shit, I was watching these characters that just happened to be thrown in this situation by coincidences that happen in life. I don't know how to explain it, but you'll see what I mean when you watch the show. It doesn't feel like it's made up. It feels like something that could happen in your everyday. And it just happened to be the wackiest fucking thing that brings all these people together. And I thought that was, I thought that was really a good way to kind of present it. Well, there's no actors right now, so let's hope something happens fast so there can be a new season. Yeah, I do agree. Is that caused by poor writing, poor editing? I think a lot of it was just poor editing. I don't think it was the writing that was poor. I think it was the form of the series. But and yes, cheers. Anyways, so so for me, I felt like the way they set up some of the coincidences that happen didn't they felt like things that would happen in real life. Like, you cut somebody off, they get pissed off, they kill your ass. He finds this book. Being a criminal, says, oh, this book is blackmail. Well, maybe it's not real. Tests it out. First person he tested out just happened to be the guy who bombed the judge because he was the most low key. And that makes sense to him bombing the judge guy because he's the one with the lowest figure in the book. So when you put it together like that, I do see what they were going for. And I do kind of respect the way things flow into each other where you're just like, holy shit, like, had he not have killed this judge, then where does the story go exactly? It's more of, it makes me kind of appreciate the way that they convey the real life crazy shit that happens. That's all I can say. Like, just how you meet people, how things happen. So, Adios really starts to pull that together. And like I said, this is the 6th episode, and at first I got nervous, but okay, shit goes down. So, so they go into this, Mansell and Sweetie go into this parking garage. They go to sell this painting. The man has 12,000. Mansell wants 15. Mansell rams the man with his car. He goes off the side, so more shit happens. Sweetie at this point is getting tired of Mansell's bullshit. Sweetie and Mansell have been good friends since in episode 2 where they did that drug bust thing. And Sweetie feels very oppressed by Mansell. So Sweetie goes back and Sweetie decides to trick Mansell into going into this meeting and tries to trick him into getting busted by the cops using the book. And the way the meeting goes down, once again, shows Mansell, Boyd Holbrook, who could be a one-dimensional villain, but also kind of shows his intelligence. And he has foresight, and he thinks ahead. And Mansell, when they arrest him, he forces one of the people to, in the book, to hold on to the book so he doesn't have the blackmail book on him, and kind of plays the cops, and then calls the lawyer, and she gets him off. And Raylan basically calls him lucky, but says that he's playing a dangerous game, blah, blah, blah. And, of course, Mansell says to him, you know what, we're both playing a dangerous game, blah, blah, blah. You know, they have a good back and forth. And then Mansell goes to the Arrested Development guy, Dickie, my favorite guy. Unfortunately kills him because the dude sent an assassin after him. That was a whole nother side plot. I didn't get into it. Not that important. Just a funny comical thing. also shows Mansell's ruthlessness. He starts tying up loose ends. Well, he finds out Sweetie sold him out. And now here's where shit picks up. Spoiler alert. Sweetie is in the bar with Mansell. Mansell and Sweetie have quite possibly one of the best dialogues between each other I've heard in a long time. And he plays his tape that I told you is his Kill People tape with him singing a cover to Seven Nation. And Sweetie goes out like a fucking trooper, and quite possibly another great line in the show. And he's like, "So, Sweetie, what do you think of this? Do I got a chance to be a singer? Blah blah blah." And Sweetie looks at him and goes, "You know I don't care about that cracker ass shit." And he goes, "You're gonna sit here and play this honky music that I don't like, blah blah blah," just fucking letting him have it. And this is the only guy who could talk to Mansell throughout the show like this, and he basically knew he was fucking dead. Now keep in mind, Sweetie and Caroline, the district attorney, they're good friends. The reason why she's doing half of the shit she's doing is to protect him. It's the only reason why she represents Mansell. So this is all important now. Wasn't before. But anyways, Mansell shoots Sweetie in the chest. And he shoots him after basically he tells him to go fuck himself, and that he's not afraid of him like everybody else. And Mansell, this is probably the only kill in this whole entire show, and this guy kills like I think 8, 9 people throughout this whole show. I'm thinking about the last episode. I think it's like he racks up a good kill count. This guy has no problem brutally, ruthlessly killing people. And once again, this is that depth that I talk about where the actor adds more depth than the character actually has on paper. His acting in this particular scene of killing essentially his only friend is really good. And Boyd Holbrook really knocks it out of the park in this scene, and so does the dude who plays Sweetie, Von D. Curtis Hall. They do some brilliant acting in this scene. It was really great, and they really do bring a lot of emotion to this scene. And Sweetie was only a character that's in episodes 1 through 6, and I think that the actor himself, as I stated, the writing is basic but strong enough to where they direct these actors to give this more depth than this writing actually lends to. Like when you put this story under a microscope, it's a very thin story, but the acting and the way the lines are delivered, and I've said this several times when I review something, it's not necessarily your story that can tank your show or movie. Okay? If you have just good enough writing and some fucking high caliber actors, you can take something that would be average and elevate it. And that's clearly what happened in this show. Like 8 episodes, I feel like they did not have enough episodes to do a typical well thought out, well fleshed out season of Justified. But the writing was just strong enough and the acting was of such caliber that they really take this plot that shouldn't work and these characters that are super thin. And by the end of this, they make you give a shit about the characters. They make you care about these people in this new world of Detroit. And I think that's where this show really excels. Because I fucking hated Sweetie being killed. and here's the thing, he's in 6 episodes, and I think he has 2 episodes directed to telling you about his backstories, but this guy is such a great actor that it felt like somebody I fucking knew for like 10 seasons being murdered. It was some really fine acting, and shout out to Von D. Curtis Hall. I should have known because he was great in Daredevil, but like, holy shit, this guy's a good actor. So Sweetie gets shot. That's our ending. It's really good. And Mansell not only shoots him, but he sets his bar that he owns on fire. Now that is a stinger. Like 6, 7, and 8 really drive it home. But that's what I was saying. Like, you go through episodes 1 through 5, and some of them have a good stinger, but most of them is just like it ends. It's like they meant for it to be binged, but instead they decided to release it weekly, and it just doesn't work. But right here is where I feel they kind of changed it up. Sorry about that. Thank you, Aaron. For me, it was not the writing in this show that is the issue. The issue, to me, I believe, is the pacing. The show is not paced well, and I think it's because they're only working with 8 episodes as opposed to 13 or 16. If you don't know, Justify's normal run is 13 to 16 episodes, and it's a perfect length. It's just the right amount of time to build up characters, side stories, and things like that. This felt like it was too short. Even if it went 10 episodes, I think would have been perfect with the way that they paced the show out. But unfortunately, now they left us with this big cliffhanger, and we start up episode 7, and so Sweetie is in a flashback in 1988, and it talks about how he started his club, and he makes a promise to his dying father, and that's where he got the bar, and he reconstructed the bar and built the bar, and it's kind of like a tribute to Sweetie because as last episode, Sweetie got shot. So in present day, Caroline sees the ambulance that takes Sweetie's body away. The club is destroyed. She is fucking pissed. And the dude who was a friend of Sweetie's, um, he tells him about Mansell did it. And he shows him the gun. And now they have 2 options. And if you guys have ever seen Justified, you know there's a point when Raylan fucking loses it. And there's a point where Raylan kind of goes into the whole, I'll take him in, but not really. I'm going to force him to draw on me, and I'm going to shoot him. So basically it's above board, but not really, because I know I'm going there with the intent to cause a shootout. So we're here with this plot, okay? We're to the point where Raylan is fucking sick of this guy's shit. Caroline is devastated who he's now banging. That's the district attorney. And he's just ready to fucking end this. He wants to see his kid. The law is not doing it, basically. And the one good thing they do explore through this season is this notion of whether or not the law can actually punish everybody who should be punished. The concept of, and this was explored in the original Justified as well, the concept of U.S. Marshals, and that sometimes the justice of the old days, like the gunslinger, like, does that have a place in our modern world? And I gotta say, this one thing in particular is explored very well. And we'll get to episode 8. But the sense of there's some things the law should punish and can't, or won't, or gets its hands tied. And this is where I said they were right there with what they could have explored as far as the political end of it that made sense for this show, and they just don't have enough time to really dive into that. They like touch on the surface level, these really deep things you can go into. And like I said, the show is so good, it's just like my frustration of that, me, because it's so good, I want them to explore more. If the show was shit, I wouldn't want any more. But like at this point, and the implications and the way they set things up, I just wish it was explored a little bit more. So, needless to say, Caroline is on the warpath. She's shocked when Raylan informs her that they found the gun that killed the judge, and that killed everybody. And so he decides he's going to take this gun. He's going to do the sheriff thing first, because he's changing, becoming a father, whatever else. So he says, you know what? Fuck it, I want to get out of here. They got the smoking gun, literally. And so he decides he's going to take the gun to the Justice Department and put him away for good. Mansell, with the biggest balls of steel I've ever seen, because as I said before, Mansell is a great character. Boyd Holbrook is given at this point a fucking, like, honestly, Emmy-worthy performance. I'm not even hyping this up. Like, seriously, Boyd Holbrook fucking acts his ass off at these last episodes, right? So he tracks down Carolyn in her house, and there's a great scene, very chillin', very intense, where he takes her and grabs her by the throat and fucking slams her against the refrigerator. And here's the scary part about Mansell. Here's what makes this scene so intense. And like I said, actors can really save your ass if your script is kind of He talks to her like a friend, but threatening at the same exact time. He's got her by the throat in her house, lifted in the air. And this is a pretty skinny dude, but and a gun to her chest. And yet he's talking to her like this, like not yelling. He's saying, I could fucking kill you. I want my fucking gun back. And he goes, you're a really good attorney, and I like to pay my bill, but I can pay it another way. And I was like, this motherfucker's got the biggest balls of steel of any justified character I've ever come across. Just that scene alone, like, the way he acts it out, he imbues this sense that even when this character is upset, he never lets his emotions drive his, his actions completely. Now, he does lose control, but it's weird. It's like certain parts he loses control, but at the same time, there's parts where he intentionally leans into his rage, and it's fucking creepy and scary. And I gotta say, once again, Boyd Holbrook does an excellent fucking job. Really pulls off this performance. Just stellar job. Just honestly Emmy-worthy stuff. I'm not gonna be Emmy nomination worthy performance. Like, it's chilling. It's scary. It's chilling in the fact of you never feel like he's like abusive as far as women go. It's this sense of how he presents, like, he does not look at it as women, men, whatever. It's, he has no regard for life, I think is the best word. He does not care about people in general. I think that's what makes him such an imposing villain. He has this air about him, where he does not care about human beings. Like, he just is a killer. And I don't know. It's hard for me to explain. You really have to watch the show. Um, it's just the way he conducts himself in certain scenes is just 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 downright at points super scary. I mean, that's the best I could say. I wish I had better words, but just honestly, this scene really solidifies just how much he does not give a shit about life itself. He does not care about your race, your color, your creed, your religion. At this point in the show, you see he really just gets a joy of this reputation he has, of the power he has with how people fear him and things like that. The only person he seems to respect is Raylan, and that's just because of their skills to kill people. So they have that little thing. Caroline escapes from that situation, and Raylan finds Downey in the book. She explained she was the one who let Mansell go. So Raylan is super fucking pissed. Because she says they have insufficient evidence, even though he had the murder weapon. And so Sandy, being desperate, she steals Mansell's money and flees to the airport, intending to leave. That's his stupid fucking girlfriend. And she's called by Mansell, who arrives, and he has a hostage. He tells her to come back with the money. She calls him back. Blah blah blah. Mansell, Sandy gives him away to Raylan, intending to live an honest life. Mansell kills another person. This Dell person, not really important. At this point, Raylan is super fucking pissed, and Raylan's like at the point where he's like, okay, I gotta do what I have to do. So once again, through this, I like to play a little bit of clips. So here's another great clip we've got. Hold on, is their like little showdown that they have. Oh no, hold on, wrong one. But anyways, uh, I'm gonna see if I can find it. But basically, the clip is that Mansell and Raylan sit down, and he's like, you know what, I am, I'm tired of this like tit for tat or whatever. And he's like, he takes the gun that's the evidence that Mansell killed these people, and he puts it on a table. And he goes to Mansell. He goes, you've wanted this since the beginning, blah blah blah. And he's like, okay, are we gonna do this or what? Mansell looks at him and he's like, you think I'm stupid? You're just gonna shoot me. And Raylan in Raylan fashion is like, no, I'm gonna give you an opportunity that I give everybody, and it's the classic. Raylan is like, we'll draw for it, right? And so they're sitting at this table, and like I said, folks, cliffhangers, okay? They're sitting at this table, they do their little badass speech, and he takes his fucking gun out that this guy likes, and the guy's like, this, and he goes, so all I gotta do is reach for it, and we'll see who's quicker. He goes, yeah, and he goes, well, Seems like how men would handle a situation. Takes his hand up like this. Raylan's got his gun underneath the table. There's like intense, and this is what I mentioned earlier about tension. There's this intense moment where the scene kind of lingers and it holds. And I'm not going to lie to you guys, I was sweating watching this scene because I'm waiting for it. I'm like, oh shit, can Raylan, because this dude's quick. He's younger than Raylan. And I'm picturing like how he could jump to the side, grab the gun, whatever else. So his hand is up, Raylan's hand is up. All of a sudden, Albanian mob guys, we forgot about. They come in. They put a gun to the back of Raylan's head. They put a gun to Mansell. And they go, no, this is not how we're going to end this. And I thought to myself, well, fuck, how is this show going to end? Because I thought it was going to be the standard Justified ending. You know, Raylan might get shot. You know, this is essentially the final season. So I'm like, holy shit, like, what is the final, like, there's one episode. How are they going to tie all this up? So they take them, and the mob guy, the Albanians decide to interrupt the meeting. They take Raylan and Mansell in a car, and Raylan's riding with the head of the Albanian family, the dude played by the guy from Oz, and, you know, they're going, this is not how we settle it. We're going to settle this our way. And in the first episodes, he had talked about how the Albanians had gotten justice in their country. And like I said, there's a theme running through this show about justice and what it means and the failure of the justice system and stuff like that that's not explored. But long story short, he throws the gun that can incriminate Mansell over the fucking bridge. And he takes Mansell and he goes, you know, he goes, I've got a better punishment for him. And the episode ends with him throwing the gun over the bridge, getting back in the car, and he goes, now let me show you how justice is done. Boom, cut to credits. Fucking great cliffhanger. Good job. That's how you hook an audience. I was invested. All right, let's go. Last episode, episode 8, The Question. And this is where shit got crazy. I'm going to let you know my rating for this episode is like fucking a 10. Maybe it's because of all the nods that are in here. But, you know, I'm a sucker for a good cameo. Anyways, so we pick back up at the end of the previous episode. So when the panic room from the idiot son of this guy was trapped on this dude's leg, they take them back to where this panic room was. And the Albanians say that the punishment for Mansell is going to be they are going to lock him in this panic room and he's just going to disappear. No questions asked. Nobody knows what happens, and he basically says this boof disappeared. And Raylan's like, well, I'm curious how you found out where this meeting was. And you find out that Caroline had called the Albanians, the chick sleeping with Raylan. So she had called the Albanians because he had killed Sweetie, and she was tired of the law not doing anything. Keep in mind, she's a prosecutor, so there's plot holes in there. And I'll get to that when I get to my final review overall of the series as a whole. But long story short, she sold him out and instead went for the justice the Albanians were offering. And the deal was that he gets the book back, Raylan, so that he can convict the people in the book. And she gets justice for Sweeney's death, with Mansell locked in this cage, essentially, and probably dies of starvation. So they lock him up in this quiet room, or panic room, and they walk away. And at this point, I paused the show and I said, well, fuck, there's like 35 minutes left. So where is this all going, right? So I'm quite curious. And so after they lock him in this panic room, it cuts to Raylan, and he decides to prosecute Maureen, who is the person who let him go, and he turns over the book as evidence. And they arrest her, and she is like the opposing district attorney. She's up for like head of the next head judge position or whatever. Like I said, a lot of these plot points are developed, so this storyline really doesn't mean anything to me. I'm waiting for the other one to kick off, but long story short, she's corrupt. Caroline uses the book to position herself to get the head judge position. Which, okay, I like Caroline, so I'm like, cool, whatever. It's a good way to wrap up her storyline. Then Raylan, being the suspicious guy that he is, just doesn't feel right with how everything ends. And he decides he's going to go back and just make sure. He just wants to make sure that Mansell is trapped, he ain't getting out, and he goes back to where the panic room is. Well, they cut to 2 hours earlier. The idiot son of the Albanian mob guy, who Mansell beat the shit out of and broke his leg but didn't kill him, is in the hospital. It's been like it's been a couple of weeks at this point, so he's on the mend. He feels like less of a man. One of the Albanian like muscle, the top guy to the head of the family, gives him a gun, tells him where Mansell is. Mansell, being that he's not a fucking idiot, was hiding in the corner waiting for somebody to open up the thing. And this is where I say the writing's kind of weak, because I don't know why the outside of the door would still work where they broke the control on the inside of the door so he couldn't get out. I don't like the logistics of that. Didn't make sense to me, but whatever. It's a small nitpick. I'll get to them. But long story short, he opens the door and Mansell beats the shit out of the son, and this time kills him. But he kills him by beating him, and this shows that Mansell has truly lost his mind. He is unhinged. He's full on kill everybody mode. And this is the big finale that I think they knew people wanted. So he takes the gun and he flees, and he goes to where the head of the mob guy's office is, because he's the head of the Albanian mob. Pretty much everyone knows where he is. No one's got the balls. Mansell goes in, starts fucking killing everybody. And this is where I said I lost count of how many people he killed, because he walks in and he kills everything that moves. There's a couple of great shots of him like shooting the guards, and then this one guard walks past and he whistles, and the dude turns around and he shoots him. Then he just goes into the office, and the head of the mob reaches for a gun. Of course, his right-hand man gets brutally murdered, and it gives him time to die for a gun. He shoots. Mansell does this like little like dodge thing and shoots him in the throat and then in the chest, and boom, killed the head of the Albanian mob. And now he walks out and he says, I got to get to my lawyer. He's got 2 guns now at this point. Remember, he was like 2 guns down, so he's doing pretty good. Raylan alerts the authorities about Mansell, but they arrive to the scene too late. Now, Mansell pulls a whole I'm leaving town thing, but then goes back to the lawyer's house. Of course, Raylan tells the lawyer to get out of Dodge, and at this point, he does the old Raylan sitting in the chair in the dark. That is kind of a callback to the first couple of seasons of Justified, where he did the same thing and scared the shit out of people. And he's sitting there with his gun, and Mansell, of course, like charismatic to the very end. he breaks in very loudly to her house, and he comes and sees Raylan and goes, "Shit, I could have probably been quieter." And so they have this back and forth, and they start talking, and Raylan's just kind of listening to him, and he talks about how him and Raylan could have been friends, and they're a lot alike. And the show does a really good job of how they parallel each other. And this is where the story that Cruz told in episode 6, I believe, comes into play, where Mansell is going to try to talk to Raylan, talk him down, and he gets ready to pull something out of his coat. And of course, Raylan assumes it's a gun. But really, he pulls out the cassette tape of the cover he does for Seven Nation Army. And he shoots him in the kitchen to death. And Mansell's final lines are the funniest lines I think I've ever heard a bad guy say. He goes, "Oh man, you shot me. Why'd you shoot me? Why'd you shoot me, man? That wasn't cool." And I was just sitting there fucking laughing. And I gotta admit, Boyd Holbrook, like I said, deserves an Emmy. Just the line delivery, the way he has this look like his best friend of years just did something super shitty. And in all actuality, you're waiting for him to fucking end this guy, and he ends him. And even at the moment of his death, this guy's a prick and a sarcastic bastard to the very end. And it's just his line delivery and everything honestly makes this scene far better than it has any right to be. He just like looks at him and he's like, "You shot me, man. Why'd you shoot me?" And so Caroline rushes in, and Mansell is bleeding out, and she makes a call, and he goes, "Oh, good, you called an ambulance." And she looks at him and goes, "No, I called the coroner." And I was like, "Oh boy!" Like, and this is what I'm saying with the actors elevating the material, because the way the lines are delivered, it's so fucking cold, and then Mansell's reaction to what they're saying to him is so fucking hilarious that actually you kind of feel bad for him despite the fucked up shit he did throughout this whole series, where he's just like, it's just like he's in a house with friends and they all betrayed him, but this guy came to kill this woman. He came here to shoot her dead. And the way he delivers his lines, you actually feel like they betrayed him, because at the end he didn't pull out a gun, he pulled out a cassette, and when we saw, he had 2 pistols. So it's just, it's like a final fuck you he gives to them, like proving to Raylan that he's just a murderer like him. It's like the Joker and Batman kind of dynamic, where Joker will pull some shit to try to get Batman to kill him, and then kind of get the last laugh kind of thing. And that's what it felt like at the end of this. Like, Mansell was just like, "Yeah, you might have killed me and you might have won, but I just proved you're no different than I am," kind of a thing. And I thought it was brilliant. Like I said, this episode by itself would probably just be a 10 out of 10. And we're not even getting into the cinematography and attention and everything else, but like, holy shit. So it cuts to 6 weeks later. Raylan is back in Miami, and they are awarding him finally, after years of putting up with shit and going through Boyd and all these people. They say, "Raylan, you get the final offer," and his other chief is retiring, and he wants him to take his position. And he goes, they have a fun little conversation, and Raylan's sitting there. He looks bored as ever because he hates these fucking meetings. If you follow the show, you know he's not a meetings kind of guy. He's more of an action guy. And he goes, "Well, this is awkward." The guy who's his boss pulls him to the side and is like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "If you're afraid about the position," he goes, "I'll put in for you. You know, you've put in the work. You really showed your grit in this whole Detroit thing, and we want to make you the chief." And he looks at him and this is where I feel like this might be the end, but I'll get to where they can continue it. So he lays down his badge, and my mouth is hanging out, and I go, "No fucking way." And Raylan says, I quit. And he goes, I'm done. I'm retiring. And this goes back to the story Cruz told him where he quit because he shot a perp who just had a pen. And now Raylan went through the same thing. Boyd pulled out a cassette tape and he killed somebody which he didn't feel was justified. Hence the name. So it was the first time Raylan in his mind has crossed the line that he always walked, which was morally gray. And this is a callback once again to the other seasons of Justified, where somebody asked Raylan one time when he would retire, and he said to him he would retire when he didn't understand where the lines were anymore, where he crossed the lines he felt like he shouldn't cross. And when he killed Mansell, that was the line he crossed. And him turning in the badge was a representation of him realizing that the lines between right and wrong, good and bad, he's no longer able to see those lines clearly. And so he hands his badge in. And he's like, fuck this. And then finally, here is where we get the long-awaited fucking cameo I was waiting for. Winona, who's been fucking absent this whole entire time, wondering where the fuck the mom is for this kid who I fucking hate. She comes over, and he's painting his house. It's like 6 weeks later after all this. He's painting his house. He's done with the Marshal shit. And they have a great conversation that kind of ties up their storyline from 6 years and this spinoff. And he tells her, I'm retired, so I'll have plenty of time to paint the house. And she looks, and she's kind of hurt, which is a great callback to their thing because she asked him to retire, but she's like, oh, you retired for our daughter, so just as good. And it kind of leaves it ambiguous because he doesn't really say it's for his daughter, but I think that kind of plays a part, but it's more implied it's really for himself, like he's just had enough. And then finally, the cameo that nobody knew was coming, and the fucking stinger that didn't need to happen for the last fucking episode. They cut to my favorite character of all of Justified. Walton Goggins returns as Boyd Crowder in prison. If you remember the end of season 8, him and Raylan have a fucking Emmy-worthy fucking conversation, and this show never got the fucking Emmy. Fuck you, Emmys. Anyways, Boyd is back, and it's implied that Boyd has cancer. And Boyd, in his Boyd fashion, Walton Goggins does not miss a fucking beat with this character. He's on his I've seen Jesus and blah 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 bullshit that he always peddles. And he talks about how, he's going to miss everybody in jail. Basically, Boyd is Boyd. He's made friends with all of the fucking criminals, and he's preaching to them. And it kind of takes it back to his preacher roots. And I thought, oh, okay, that's a cool way to imply. Yeah, there's a lot of seasons of it. Like I said, skip to the last one. You get the Cliff Notes. But anyways, Boyd comes back, and he's like, if this cancer thing turns out to be well, he hands his Bible to this inmate. And he goes, everything's in the good book there. And then he announces he's going to be transferred. And Boyd is being transferred by these 2 officers. And Boyd starts hollering in the back of the car. And he's like, oh, God. Oh. He's like, Lord Jesus, save me. Blah, blah, blah. So the officer gets really fucking pissed. And he goes, oh my God. He's like, we're going to beat the shit out of this fucker. He's like, because that's how they do in Kentucky. That old school Kentucky law, okay? Them officers do not fuck around with you. So they stop the transport at the iconic bridge that I showed in the beginning from the Justified little teaser they do with the song. And they start playing the theme a little bit in the background, and I go, what the fuck is happening right now? And so there is a girl officer and a dude transporting him. And the dude opens the door, and he goes, what's all with all this hooting and hollering? And Boyd in his fucking accent, badass as shit, goes, well, hell, son. And he's like, I thought you'd never open the back. And he goes, well, I hope it was worth it, because I'm going to beat the shit out of you. And then he's got a shotgun to the back of his head. And I'm like, wait, what? Boyd's escaping? Like, wait, this is supposed to be a one-off series. Like, he is the main antagonist of the whole Justified show. Like, of all of the seasons, he's like the main antagonist. And I go, the way they left it, it was implied he was just going to be in prison for the rest of his life. So imagine my shock and my joy when I see this motherfucker, because it's implied he had a plan, but at this point he's got cancer, he's kind of old, so I didn't think nothing of it. But as a good show does, Stinger, he's got the shotgun held to the back of this dude's head, and you find out that the lady officer who was transporting him is actually fucking Boyd. And I was like, oh, Boyd has it. And he's got a car waiting for him. And she's like, so now what are you going to do? And he goes, I have been miraculously healed by Jesus' love and light. And he goes, I think, honey, we're going to get out of here and go visit an old friend. Implying he's going to go see Raylan. And so I was like, wait a second. Is this a jump off for a new series? Are they just fucking with us? Is it just implying that Boyd's just gonna be out there? Like, because this is supposed to be it. They said limited series, one shot, they're not doing any more episodes, so I'm wondering if they're keeping this in their back pocket. I have no fucking idea. I hope this show got watched by a lot of people. I really do. It's why I'm doing a review. But so he just smiles. They fucking take off in a car, and then Raylan is fishing on his boat. He brought a boat for his daughter, and they're fishing. And then all of a sudden, you hear a phone ring, and it's the Marshal service. They show the phone, and Raylan just looks down, and it looks up, looks down, and then it's kind of implied, like, it cuts to black and it goes to the credits, and it kind of leaves that question of, is he going to answer that phone call? And is that phone call, more than likely the phone call is them saying Boyd fucking escaped and he's going to be hunting you, or, you gotta hunt him, or maybe they want him to do the manhunt for Boyd, but that's how they fucking end the show. And I was like, now that's the fucking teaser I was waiting for all goddamn season, and they do it the very last fucking episode, and I'm sitting there going, holy shit. So the way they close out this series is done. All the characters are handled here. They all get conclusive endings. You can even say Railing has a full arc. His ending comes full circle. He leaves the Marshals, but there is books where he's a private investigator and he has wacky shenanigans, but he's not connected with the Marshal service anymore. So I wonder if this is implying setting up that arc of the books, because there is an arc where Boyd does escape and Raylan hunts him as a private investigator trying to find out where he is, and they have their standoff, because in this world they are like the Joker and Batman, and that's like the main antagonist and the main protagonist. They always have this back and forth, and Raylan won't kill him because they used to mind cold together and they're like brothers, and Boyd won't kill him because they have too much fun together. It's like a Joker-Batman dynamic. Once again, I know I'm using that, but that's the best way to describe their relationship. So, all in all, it was... I have to say, I've now seen a few revival shows, and this has got to be the best revival and the best ending to a revival series that I've seen. Now, it was kind of sketchy until Mansell broke out. There were things that were questionable, but yeah, I know that's what I was figuring too. Aaron Cooper says figures they wait to the end and see. That's how they make sure to watch for the next season. LOL. Yeah, it definitely felt like they were confident enough, and that it felt like someone said, if the ratings are good, we need a hook so that we can make another season. And you know what? I respect that they didn't kill the main character just to kill him and make it shocking. And they always had Boyd in their back pocket. They even did this thing where Walton Goggins expressed he was not going to be in the show. So I looked it up, and according to this interview, at the very end, they didn't have a hook. They had the whole scripts written. They knew how this show was going to end, but they wanted to have Boyd back in there. And Walton Goggins specifically said he did not want to do Boyd again unless there was a reason for him to come back, because he felt like they wrapped up his story good in the original. And keep in mind, this has always been the original creator. So the creator came to him and he said, let's do this for fun. And if something happens and we get another series, then good. But if we don't, then it just leaves him out there. And it leaves something fun for the audience, right? And Walton Goggins loved the idea. So he didn't say shit in interviews, basically implied. And when you watch the first damn near the whole show, he's not in it. So there's not even a hint that they're gonna drop this little fuck you to me. But then when they do the scene with Raylan talking to his daughter, I thought they were gonna end with her on the fishing boat. They even shoot it that way. But then it cuts and it says Kentucky, and I say, why the fuck are we going back to Kentucky? And then they show Boyd walking down the cell block, and I said, no fucking way. I go, oh, okay, so you lied. And I thought, okay, it's just going to be him, a cheap little thing. And then they drop the cancer thing, and I go, oh, okay, so they're going to give you a definite end to his character. He died in jail, because it was kind of never really resolved, like, did he die in jail? Did he come and visit him? Blah, blah, blah. So it's like, okay, they're letting fans know, yeah, he's going to die. And then they said they were transporting him. And I go, wait a second. Boyd being transported to a low... Are they setting up an escape thing? And then they show the bridge, and I go, no fucking way. And I'm trying to figure out in my mind, and at first I thought it was someone else, but then they set up he was sleeping with the guard who's transporting him. And I was like, oh my god. And then they both get in the car and ride off. And I was like, holy shit, dude. All in all, it was really, really, really good. And the stinger at the end, Willa, I forgot Willa because she's so fucking terrible as a character. She asks Raylan why he quit, and then his phone rings, and it shows federal marshals, and then that's when they cut to the black, and it's implied, like, you don't know, did he pick up the phone, did he answer it, is he gonna go after Boyd, what's the final outcome, either we're gonna get another series with those two, or it's just a giant use your imagination thing. You know, will Raylan pick up the phone? What is Boyd gonna do? It's implied he's gonna go fuck with Raylan. Like, it's strongly implied he's gonna go. He said he's gonna go look up an old friend. So it's implied he's gonna in some way antagonize him. So, you know, it ends everything good, which is important. The show has a definitive ending. All of the stories are wrapped up. Not necessarily as neat as they could be, but they wrap up the everything has a resolution. The stuff that was left open from the old series is all resolved. But they leave that room for another season to make sense, which I respect. Because if you're going to do something like, hey, we could do another season if y'all watch this and you like it, we could bring these characters back. We could put a new series, you know, they can have him go to Miami. There's so many things they can do in the future now because they've taken it out of the Kentucky setting. They use Detroit, and Raylan right now lives in Miami. So they could even do something where they bring Boyd to Miami. Okay, sorry about that. Thank you, Aaron, once again for letting me know that my mic is being a complete ass. Um, so like I said, they could go to Miami. There's a lot of different possibilities for this story to go into. Um, my negatives are as follows. I think they don't do enough with the Detroit setting. They don't do enough with their side characters. Sweetie and Caroline are the most fleshed out characters, but the rest of them kind of take a back seat. I think there's a lot of missed opportunities with the theme of corruption. I feel like they could have talked about how corrupt Detroit was and it would have fit the show very well. But unfortunately, they don't really take the time to explore this corruption. So when you're dealing with the corruption subplot, uh, there's a lot of good things started, but nothing really followed through by the end of it. And I thought that my biggest negative is Timothy Olyphant's daughter is terrible actress. I'm sorry, she's not very good. Now I don't know if it's the material she was given. I don't know if she's just young and hasn't developed her acting skills. I don't want to be hard on an actress, but she's fucking terrible in this show. She really weighs it down for the first 3 or 4 episodes, and I'm sorry, I hate to say that. And seeing as to his whole motivations, Raylan's motivations, are tied in to Willa and his daughter. I think you needed a strong actress to act alongside Timothy, and there's just not. They got chemistry there from being actually related, but the way they have the actress play her is just like I'm confused. Is she 16? Why is she talking like a really little kid? Why is her voice fucking annoying? Was that a choice by the directors? Um, it just really drags down their storyline, and it bugs me because I feel like they had something with him using his own daughter, but they just had her play the role really terrible. And if she is a better actress than this, then it's really a shame that they really misused her the way they did. And if she couldn't act, then I think it was a bad call to make her the older version of his daughter, because it takes away from that dynamic that's supposed to come back at the end of the show. So um, those are my big issues. Now, my positives, this show, the last like 3 episodes, holy shit. Like, look, I'm of the mind you can fuck up the beginning of a show, but if you can nail the ending, that's pretty important. And they nailed the beginning and they nailed the end. And for me, you can have a show with a boring kind of middle part, but as long as you can hit the end of a show and the beginning of a show, because then you have a strong start and you have a strong finish. And really, the ending and the beginning is what people talk about. It's the most important points of your show. If you cannot hook people in and keep them invested, or you haven't built up enough investment in the beginning, and if you have and you fuck up the ending, either or is bad for your show. And to me, this has a very strong opening and it has a super strong closing. And so I think they nailed the reviving aspect. I would have liked them to have more episodes so that way they could have given a little bit more to the story itself. I think if you give this show like 10, even 10 episodes, you could flesh out the side characters a lot more. And that's a positive and a negative, because yes, I want you to focus on the two main characters, but if you're going to explore corruption and police brutality and all that stuff, then you've got to give the show enough room to breathe. And unfortunately, that is both a positive and a negative. The show moves too quickly in certain parts and it moves too slow in others, and that really hurts. And you could tell the directors and the writers didn't have much room to flesh out the whole entire story. Like, this felt like it should have been 13 episodes, honestly. And normally I complain when a show has too many episodes, but in this case, 8 episodes was too condensed. They, make it an even 10 or an uneven 13, and I think you have a really, probably since season one of the better seasons of Justified. Honestly, it was just the side characters take a back seat midway because now you have to resolve the main conflict. And that really hurts the show in general because there's so many cool avenues that are now blocked off because you're only working with 8 episodes. Other than that, the visuals were amazing. It was very well shot. The dialogue is outstanding. Even though there's a lot of talking, some of it's slow. The back and forth, the chemistry with everybody on screen is amazing. Especially with Caroline, Raylan, and Mansell. The 3 main leads really hold this season up, and they have really great back and forth. The side character, Sweetie, like I said, um, uh, Vondell Curtis Lee, great actor, and he really brings out a good reason for the things that happen at the end of the show to happen. That character has very little time to make a presence, and the actor really puts 100% into you caring about Sweetie. Without Sweetie having a big death moment in this show, if you don't feel that impact, the back end of the show falls apart. So, shout out to that actor because he does a really great job holding up that middle piece. Like, without you being attached to this character, the show doesn't work at the end. So, there's a lot of highlights and standouts. The dude with the small cameo from Arrested Development, fucking hilarious. That whole little sub story adds additional layers to the different characters. Just all in all, the actors put 100% into this show. The writers put a good amount of effort into fleshing out what was important. The directors and the lighting and the cinematography does a lot of heavy lifting. The shots and the way they choose to edit is also pretty good. Some spots is bad, but most of the times the editing in this show really helps highlight the tension of a scene. Like the cutting of somebody getting their leg crushed or their tooth pulled out. These are very important things into bringing a little bit more of suspense to a scene, and it draws the audience in because it it lets your imagination work. And I highlighted this before. Your imagination is the most powerful thing, and I think them not showing everything and letting us decide what happens in a scene really adds to the tension, and it really makes the character of Mansell more threatening. You don't have to show him always like killing people, just his actions and what he does and the implications can really highlight how dangerous he is. And there's this thing that says show don't tell. And I think they did a good job of showing you the decline of the character as opposed to saying, oh, he's just so bad. He murdered all these people. He's the Oklahoma Wildman. He's brutal. Like, they show you his mental decline. They show you the lengths he's willing to go and how quickly he can snap at any one moment. That one clip I played for you where he eggs on Raylan on purpose to get into his head. It's scenes like that really take this show from just being kind of mediocre to being tension filled and keeping him at the edge of your seat wondering how the conflict is going to end. And really, if the conflict between them doesn't work, then you don't have a show. As I said before, Boyd Holbrook knew that Walton Goggins was a great antagonist, and he didn't try to copy his performance. He tried to bring his own flavor to this villain. And I think that really helps to establish somebody who could push Raylan just as far as Boyd ever could. In some ways, this villain did more than Boyd did in the whole run of Justified. He actually made him do something he thought he would never do. And the lead up to that was so expertly crafted that I believe this one guy could be the one. You know, Raylan was always on that tightrope, and all it takes is one person to push you over one way or the other. And this character is so expertly set up to be the guy to make that final push and make Raylan say, fuck it, I'm done with this. I'm out. And Boyd Holbrook really, really put his acting chops down here. I think this man needs to be in more stuff. I'm just going to be honest. I think he plays one of the best antagonists. Like, he is that guy who could play a really good antagonist. Most roles I've seen him in, he's an antagonist, and he's just got it down. Every villain he plays is never just one-dimensional. You want to know more about this guy. It was just like in Logan. He was a very one-dimensional villain in that movie, but Boyd Holbrook himself brings a charisma and a presence that really sells these roles that he plays. And honestly, I'd like to see him in more stuff. I think without him and Timothy together on screen, this show doesn't work. This show doesn't work at all. You would have to either have Timothy and Walton, or you'd have to have this guy and Timothy to bounce off of each other. So all in all, I like this series. I'm gonna give this show as a whole I'm gonna say this is really tough, but given how I feel about the beginning of it and the ending of it, um, I'm going to give this show probably a 7 out of 10. Um, I think it's above average. I think it's worth watching if you're a fan of Justified. There's just a lot of different flaws that come with this show being so short. Only having 8 episodes really, I think 8 episodes hurt this show, but it's definitely worth watching. There's a lot worse on television, and I think this is a really strong series for Hulu. And I hope that they do something with Boyd escaping. I really do. I will be super pissed if we don't get an announcement about another Justified. But for right now, I think this does a good job telling a self-contained story. It gives everybody an ending. It gives you that nice little stinger at the end where you want the show to make one more season. And I think that the writers should be proud of themselves because Dexter came back, and I still have to do one more review on that. But if you see my review, I was very disappointed at the end of the show once again. I don't know if it's as bad as season 8 of Dexter, but it's not a good ending. So I think in that sense, as far as a revival, this show top notch. I've seen worse. It could have gone worse. I was entertained. It's a quick watch. If you got time, it's 8 episodes on Hulu. It'll be under Justified City Primeval, not the original Justified. But if you want to see the original Justified, they have all of the seasons out on Hulu for absolutely free. You can watch the OG Justified. I would strongly watch like the last season, honestly, to get the little fan inserts at the end, especially in season 8. But to be quite honest with you, they did a good job making a self-contained story. You don't have to watch the original Justified to appreciate what the show has to offer you. The original Justified ran for 6. Oh, I thought it was 8. It's only 6 seasons. They're like each 13 episodes apiece. So I'd watch season 6, honestly. But yeah, definitely check out that. I might release, if you guys like this review, I might release my review of all of the other Justifieds because it's one thing I've been meaning to review for the longest on my channel. But yeah, City Primeval, worth watching. Definitely check it out. 7 out of 10. Thank you, everybody. Glad you guys tuned in. Also, I will be doing a review with Pop Culture PV at some point for episode 3 of Ahsoka, which, oh boy, I've got a lot to say about that. But, yeah, I was happy to watch this, let's just say, before Ahsoka. But once again, that's 8 episodes. That's not over with, too. I got some minor gripes for that episode, but all in all, I'd say this was a much more pleasant experience so far than watching episode 3 of Ahsoka. I'm glad the last episode of Justified was so good because, quite honestly, this episode 3 of Ahsoka was very disappointing. So, I will bring you that review. I'm going to talk with the bear, see when he's ready to do a review. But thank you everybody for watching. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you're brand new to the channel and you enjoyed this long-winded episode breakdown of the full series of Justified City Primeval. And stay tuned. I've got some backlog movie reviews, good God, that I have to do. Um, and I've got coming in October the top 10 horror movies of this year, or at least in my mind. And I have a top 10 movies for the whole year coming out sometime in December. And let me tell you, there's very slim pickings. So you'll probably be surprised at the movies I will put at the top, but it definitely won't be Barbie. Uh, that's going to be funny to explain why it's not on my list. But Oppenheimer will probably be on there. But yeah, I'm gonna be doing some rankings and things like that. So in the comments below, let me know. Did you appreciate my full breakdown? Thank you. I know my mic went out a few times, but it's because I'm not wearing the mic because cowboy hat's too big for my mic. So I gotta get more of a stand kind of mic again. So it's a little bit tougher for me to do some of these reviews. But thank you everybody for watching, and definitely stay tuned to the channel. Also, I will be doing some DC Dual Force. I know I started it, but I wanted to collect most of the cards. Now that I have them, I have a couple of decks I want to show off, so that'll be coming. I'm also waiting for General Zod to drop. So I will be doing a big reveal for DC Dual Force when Zod comes. It comes with a subscription to DC Dual Force, which you know I'm getting for General Zod card. And I'll do a pack opening and show you guys Zod and show you me building a deck around General Zod. I'm super fucking excited. I hope they do stuff with like Kryptonians, and if you have certain Kryptonians, they gather together. Or maybe they have Zod's generals because he's got other generals with him. Anyways, I'm sorry that was my nerd rant, but thank you everybody for watching. Enjoy. Go check out Books by Jay. We started a new podcast called In the Shadows. We did a thing on Colleen Ballinger, and she plans on doing some more talks about that. The links are in the description to Books by Jay's channel, to Cybernetic Husky, and pretty much everybody in the fandom zone that you can go and check out. PurpMinded, he's got great stuff. Our alternate channel, The Prophet of Geek Cultures, is down there, so you can check out our nerdier stuff. My Twitch channel, which I have yet to still work on. Jesus Christ, I might do some gameplay over there. And of course, my Patreon and the Cash App if you like the channel and want to help us out here. And my moviepalette.com. Save 15% off of all purchases. Thank you, movie.com, for sponsoring every one of these videos that I make. I have my movie palette, of course, of Nick Cage. If you want to save 15% on your own, enter promo code ZONE15, which is linked in the description below. But thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. And remember one thing here in the channel. On this lonely road, trying to make it home. Kind of tired, pissed off, and on my own. No, I'm sorry. That's terrible. That's a terrible rap attempt. That's from the Justified thing. God damn. Okay, I'm just gonna end this. Good night, everybody.